My wife, Polly, who many of you know, and myself both had the pleasure of growing up together in the same small town. It wasn't Scappoose. It was a small town not far from here, Astoria. You might have heard of it. They made a movie about some children who got involved with some pirates there some years ago. We lived in the woods. She lived in the forest on the east side of town, and I lived next to a place called Little Forest above the west side. And one of the things that one learns growing up in a forest in a small town is that you have to make room in your heart and in your lives for the other creatures that also live in the forest. There's not a day that goes by when you live in a forest that you don't see the wildlife, both those with tails, those with wings. And you come to know them. You come to watch them and learn their ways, to learn their comings and goings, and just what makes up their lives and their place in the world. And from that, you start to discover your own place in the world. My own father was a commercial fisherman. I was the third generation in our family to be on the boat. At 8 years old, I would go on drifts on the lower Columbia for spring Chinook season and fall Chinook. And in between drifts at night, I would lay out on the bow of the boat, and I would look up at the stars, and I would absolutely marvel at how dark the sky was and all of the marvelous lights that could be seen across the heavens. It seemed as though the horizon stretched forever. And when we pulled the nets, all of the mysteries that lived beneath the surface of the river became known to me. Every inch of the net potentially disclosed another creature who I could have only imagined dwelt beneath the waves. Now, as a young boy, one of my favorite places to go was the Columbia River Maritime Museum, back when it was in its old building. And in its old building, they had a marvelous collection of the natural history of the area. It wasn't a guided tour. It was like the old Victorian curiosity cabinets. They had fish strewn in models all across the ceiling. They had portraits, photographs, samples of every possible form of life, rocks, plants, everything that came from the area. And I would wander through that museum and marvel. And I would go back to my school library, and I would check out the books on the wildlife of the forest and of the fishes and the other creatures of the river and the sea. And it was from that that I came to understand nature, and I became a young naturalist. Now, for those of you who might not be familiar with the idea of what a naturalist is, I have to tell you what a naturalist is not. A naturalist is not a scientist. Naturalists predate scientists. They're a 18th and 19th century phenomena. They're people who have boundless curiosity, microscopes generally somewhere on a table at home, magnifying glasses in pockets, and an endless ability to wander and look at things. Now, for those of you who might have seen the movie Zootopia and remember the character voiced by Tommy Chong as a yak at a particular club, when he explains that they are a naturalist club, he misspoke. What they were was a naturist club. Naturists are the people who play shuffleboard in the nude, while naturalists are people like me who wander aimlessly through fields and forests. When I grew up, went to university, I didn't study anything to do with natural history. I studied English literature and classics. And eventually, Polly, my wife now of more than 30 years, connected back with me. We married, and we settled just outside of where we'd gone to university, both of us in the Portland area. And we decided that we wanted to raise a family. And we didn't want to raise a family in the city where we didn't really know anyone. We wanted to find a place that we could call home, the home that we understood from back when we were young. And so we came to Scappoose. And the good people of Scappoose, they made room for us in their hearts and in their community. And we became part of the community. We had a daughter, Elizabeth, who went to school here, grew up here, and now continues to live here as well. And she understands the ways of the community. But our community, as Patty explained, is continuing to grow. And we have to always remember that as those who made room for us, we also need to make room for the people who are coming. But at the same time, we must respect the natural world who we imposed upon to make room for us. Up above the road where we live on the hill, there was once a meadow. It was there for decades. And in this meadow are every type of winged creature and footed-tailed creature that lives in this area. The raccoons and the skunks, the woodpeckers and the grouse, the quail, most of all, the deer. There's a herd of deer, Columbia blacktail, that lives in the meadow and has since we've been here. And we got to know them. They would wander over our property, and we would pay them greeting, as Kenneth Graham taught me to from The Wind in the Willows. But you don't stare at a deer. You simply look sideways, nod, and acknowledge them. And because of that, they don't frighten, and they come to accept you. They make room for you as you make room for them. And we both call the place home. A couple of years ago, the meadow transferred ownership, and it was cleared in order to make room for some new houses. The animals and the birds all fled the meadow. The people who lived on the hill called it the Exodus. In one day, they all left and scattered. And we didn't know where they went. We worried most particularly about the deer because the does would use the meadow as a place to bed down, to give birth, and to also hide their young during the day. Many of you have seen the deer with the spotted fawns, but often during the day, the spotted fawns are tucked away someplace safe, while the doe goes off to forage, to find water, and while the fawn is able to nap and rest, safe from predators, somewhere secret, safe. We hadn't seen the deer after the meadow had been cleared for some time. And I was working downstairs in my office one day, and our daughter Elizabeth came to the top of the stairs, and she shouted, "Papa, Papa, you have to come see this right now." And so I came up the stairs, and I walked to the front door where she was. And she opened the front door, and I looked down, and there was a spotted fawn curled up on our front doorstep. I was absolutely touched to the deepest part of my heart because I knew that the doe, probably the doe that we'd seen walking through for a long time, had decided that our home was a safe place where her fawn could rest for the day, protected and not disturbed. We took great pride and honor in being considered to have made room in our lives for the local wildlife. And we waited all day for the fawn to finally find her mother again. And then, about dinner time, after we'd checked on the fawn throughout the day through the window, The doe somehow secretly came and collected her fawn, and they wandered back to whatever secret place they spent the night. We try to live our lives, making our home room for the wildlife, just as we were welcomed into the lives of the members of our community here in Scappoose. And as we continue to make room for those who will continue to come, we also must remember to continue to respect those four-footed, winged, tailed, and otherwise who made room for us so that we could all live here together in peace. Thank you.